on this computer. Now, go.
Aloha, hola, aho, hello. This is Louis-Virie Blanche, welcoming you to Conversations with Elders on Glastonbury Radio 432, where it is our treasured pleasure to honor mother, daughter, sister, lover, priestess, goddess, and friend. As she is the blessed personification of love's perfect stranger, deja vu, we welcome you to Glastonbury Radio 432. It is my pleasure today to welcome Ariane Safran. Or do you like to be called Ariana Safran?
Both sound beautiful. They both feel like they're from other ancient times.
Yeah, they fit together so poetically. So it's beautiful to have two options. Either way you say Ariana or Ariane. Yeah. Ariane Safran is a beautiful melody there.
Thank you.
Well, the melody of your life, that synchronistic, spontaneous synchronization of life is how we have come to know one another.
Yes.
In this physical domain that we call this live stream. But as we found out when we first met physically in this earth plane, we have known each other many times before.
And we have
shared some very, very heart-opening, soul-seasoning, spirit-touching moments, which in your Akashic inner knowing, you spoke of us going back to early times in Earth history. Do you remember what you shared with me on that?
I do, very clearly. What I had seen when we were connecting, and what was so interesting about this is we had already spent 2 or 3 days together, but in a group setting. It was the first time that we were actually really connecting face to face, and I was flooded with this incredible information. But I could remember us, you as my father, before everything, before the beginning of Earth, when all of the continents were one, when we all had this red skin and red hair, very primordial. And I remember you as my father then. And I remember us seeing these great ships come into Earth, which ancient history tells us that those are Anunnaki ships. And we were there together when that happened. I remember our first thought was to sing with them. We would mostly sing. This was very early Earth. And so our sound exchange was mimicking the sounds around us, like air, water, birds, laughter. All these different sounds that we would hear is how we would communicate. You know, for example, different birds would sing at different times of the year or different times of the day. So these were how we were able to understand each other. And we decided to share our songs with them. And then from there, I was brought forward to another memory, the more recent one, which was probably in the last 400 to 500 years. Should I share that one as well?
Please do.
This one was a very painful memory. I actually might cry.
Well, I remember crying with you that day.
Yeah, we cried.
Our souls recognized the depth of emotion that we had shared.
It was very powerful. It's still really resonating, like we just shared this moment yesterday. 10 years ago, I was with family in British Columbia, Canada, and I had witnessed a lot of ancestral trauma that was kind of the beginning of Turtle Island and the Indigenous people of Turtle Island's colonization. And what I had witnessed, I had met 7 chiefs And one of those chiefs was my great, 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 great grandfather. I'm not exactly sure the amount of greats, but about 5, it was the beginning of the genocide. It was this time. What was happening at the time is these 7 chiefs were coming together to try to, there was inter-tribe wars happening at the time. So these were the more powerful tribes. So they were coming together to try to create one great nation and calm the peace among the people. This is around the same time that the ships first started coming in. And so it was a time of unrest for the people. We were already vulnerable. So this is where I originally had met the chief. Now, I had seen afterwards him being murdered by the people who were befriended in the ships. And this is the memory that came to me when I connected with you. And I recognized that you were this chief. You were my great, 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 great grandfather. And you were about 7'6". You were a giant. And it was a belief of conflict resolution, of uniting nations, bringing teachings from all sides together. This was already the political mind of you at this life, at this time. And what I witnessed was that it was what we know in history to have been a huge tool in the genocide, which is alcohol. So alcohol was involved, and it was thought to be a circle and a gathering, but there was a plan. And this is what I witnessed. And I heard what the plan was as I was witnessing it. I got the pieces. Was I saw you being in a drunken state. You were so large that it took several men to be there with you. You were laughing and joyful. You really felt that this was friendship. They were laughing too, but they had a plan. And they actually hung you. They brought you to a pre-planned place and they hung you. Myself and the other people in our tribe, and mostly women, were up on a hill and we watched this happen. And we were screaming and crying and wailing. And when I looked in your eyes, I heard screams of this moment. And when I saw you, I remember thinking of myself. I was a child at this time, like maybe 15. And I remember looking in your eyes when we met in this life, thinking, I thought I would never see you again. It's very emotional memory. And we shared that.
Yes, and I feel it very strong now. That is so special for you to have that ability to see, because it allows us to heal life streams and lifetimes, because we can embrace them and actually embrace the sorrow, journey through that trail of tears while transmuting that trail of tears and transcending and transforming ourselves back into a holy state of birthright divinity. Which is the work that it's interesting that you mentioned my focus on unifying the tribes and bringing the people back together for those purposes, because I have other lifetimes where that very calling was the priority of that lifetime. One of which was in Egypt as Akhenaten. Mm-hmm. And I don't know your specific connections to Egypt, or if you since are having a time in Egypt. Do you?
My memories of Egypt are very interesting. I only remember being deities, guides, or goddesses. I don't remember being physical in Egypt. I do remember, as you said his name, you were talking to a spirit, and I was the spirit you were talking to. So it was a non-physical connection. Mm-hmm. My time in Egypt was a guide. I was a spirit guide helping to bring medicine knowledge through the channels into the healers and people and leaders.
Well, you know, during the time of Akhenaten, the priests were manipulating the people by pretending that they were the middlemen, the only source for people to go through to reach their birthright divinity source. So when Akhenaten came into power, there was a great upheaval. Monotheism, the unity of thought was brought forth. Women were given their just due and place in society, in the temples and throughout all the important factions of society's endeavors. Women were honored under Akhenaten. And the priests were not allowed to manipulate the people anymore. And we moved to Armana. We moved the capital to a different location. And art and beauty was focused upon in that society in ways that some people, Manly P. Halu, who is a great collector of esoteric history and Akashic understandings, saw a gathering of the most powerful minds. He wrote a book pertaining to a hierarchy system of the most important people in history, you might say. And as powerful as it is for me to repeat what the way that he put it, he put Akhenaten above Christ, Buddha. A lot of major avatars and ascended masters were in that list. But because of Akhenaten's, some people say he was a heretic and he was scandalized and made to be unimportant in the history of Egypt after that short time of the reign of Akhenaten. It was like an inquisition happened because the priests were not happy at having their power taken away. And they never found, certain things were done to Akhenaten, but never, his body was never found. And I've met people, I had a gathering at a place called the House of Masters, where a woman that I met who is 93 years young today as we speak, she had gathered these portraits of the masters, and I had been guided to her home because the gentleman did a Curlian photograph of me, and he found that I had gone into the quiet stillness so easily, he wanted to get my name and my birth date. In doing so, he told me that I had 2 11s, a 22, and a 33 in my soul, destiny, personality, and career numbers. And of course, you know, the 11 is a spiritual messenger, 22 is massive endeavors, and 33 is Christ consciousness, which it led me to this place known as the House of Masters, where I met this beautiful woman named Barbara Colgate, who told me after I spent a long time in that house communing with the different masters, women and men masters. And when I came out to speak to her, she told me that she had been my mother in Egypt. Later on, she told me of a time where she was deeply connected with Cthulhu. And she told me that Cthulhu had been my father. And this was some years after I first met her, but in that same time frame of a few weeks time span of Earth time, she told me about this connection with Cthulhu, and 2 other people told me about the connection with Cthulhu. And in one of those, I had, you know, Thoth and Cthulhu and Hermes were all the same soul, so to speak. And this journey through the House of Masters brought me in touch with this beautiful woman who's asked me to return to the House of Masters, and she was going to have a gathering of special people for me to meet. Many of those people, when I met them, when I came in her home, you took your shoes off in the opening room. It was a little angel room, a room dedicated to angels. And as I was taking my shoes off, I looked into the other rooms, and the beings there were not fully embodied. They were very almost transparent at times. Now, I don't believe that was because of my visionary skills. I think that was because they were that transcendent in their nature, that they were not fully embodied here on Earth. But nonetheless, when I went in and was greeted by each of them, there were many stories, very apologetic stories, where people were weeping and saying they were sorry for what had happened in different lifetimes. Some of those were native lifetimes and some were in Egypt. But this understanding has been brought to the attention of my inner eyewitness by beautiful souls such as yours and others that I have met, it seemingly as if by chance, along this journey that we call life. So I am thankful for your presence and glad to know that we have come together at this most opportune time in the history of existence, and that you are remembering who you are and why you're here in such beautifully blessed ways, that you're providing gifts to so many souls just by your presence. But you're on a journey and you are in true fulfillment of your mission in ways that other people can learn from. And that's one of the most important aspects of talking to you today, because as you speak from your heart, mind, and from the seasonings that your soul has gathered, and from the spirit and nature of your electric light body, you carry beautiful messages. You are one that speaks in the language of light, are you not?
Yes. Yes, I am.
So I would say, as a good starting point for us in this interview, share with us how you came to be able to communicate in the language of light.
Okay. Before I answer that question, I would love to share something that I witnessed when you were just sharing your history. So when you talked about building this new place, freeing the people from the mind constraints of these priests with the agenda, I actually saw a ship appear, a galactic ship. So I was told this is the Federation of Light. So this galactic ship appeared. And I was also told that this is the same frequency as Jesus or Christ, which you had mentioned afterwards, Thoth, Jesus, Hermes. So, and I was also showed that this was like a utopia. And this was a place where all beings could walk freely. It was very similar to the rainbow prophecy whispered in nature and the earth keeper's wisdom around the earth right now. And it's so interesting how you would touch on how it's each life. And that's every time I come to earth as well for that healing pivot. Those are where most of my memories are, either the healing pivot or where we went wrong. It's one of the two. And so I was just so interesting that I saw ships involved with this experience with that you were sharing. Another thing that I saw was a memory that I haven't had for a while. I saw myself inside a tomb and somebody slowly opened the top and they looked and they said, "It is time." And I turned and when I came out of it, there were people standing around as well as priests all around me. So I'm not really sure what this is. I think that you're opened up some more memories for me during this time. So just going back to the light language now. So for me, I would have to say, when did it start? I actually had several moments and they're continuing. I would say I first started seeing light codes and sacred geometry and hearing them and hearing all these languages immediately when I woke up. It was immediate for me. I was also simultaneously seeing the binaries, the negative and the positive. So it took me a while to figure it out and maneuver. So that was immediate. And then as I progressed, I would hear light language spoken by other people and I would feel my throat. I could see it. I was connecting with it. But I could feel my throat almost like starting to jump and pop. It's like it wanted to speak, but my throat chakra was shut down. I have a trauma story. So I was deep in the middle of that trauma. It was very dark for me. So it was hard for me to speak. This is where the art came in because I couldn't speak for a long time and I had to express. Then later on, I met a gentleman that we both know, Mark Sorensen, and he was already fully attuned to light language, and this is his prime modality. And he spoke it, and it just made sense for me. So by him speaking with it and connecting with me, and he did some coding on my throat, I started to actually break down my throat chakra and speak again. Then from there, I met a guide named Tat Tat of Khan. He is he is part of the Ka, or the royal guard of the sun god Ra, and all the gods and deities that come from there, and the sun nations. And he is from the Hall of Masters. So he is a master linguist in the Hall of Masters. And so he specializes in languages from all I don't even know how many beings. These are millions of years of written dialogue and training for these masters. And so Tut Tut of Khan connects me with language. So I often will call him in because there's like a general light language that we hear the most now. It's connected with the Pleiadian star beings, but there's actually several forms and frequencies of light languages. And some of them are just pitches, they're not enunciated tones. So they're pretty deep, and like how they can change, Some are the throat singing, when people can connect with 3 or 4 octaves. That's a language as well. I hear that a lot from galactic beings. So he helps me to decipher the different types of light languages. It's not all perfectly accurate when it comes out of your mouth. I think the biggest key that I learned is you just have to trust it. You might feel a little bit silly. It's new, but simultaneously, once you connect with it, it almost overpowers you for a moment. So you have a lot of reaction happening at the same time. It's like a little bit of, it's emotional. And depending where you are on your journey and your healing story is how much you will let it flow. But the more you let it flow, the more you let it go free, the more you connect with it. And I think that's the biggest thing for me, is just to allow myself to connect with it, allow myself to feel the emotions that come with it, and then connect with it and trust. There's a lot of trust. But I just did an activation class for these particular codes behind me on Monday. And all the people that I activated, I used light language, sound, drumming, rattles, vibrational tones and frequencies, as well as the knowledge and consciousness and here within the electric universe. And I would have to say, like, the light codes just came through at different parts of their body to connect with. And when I look at them, they're all covered with shimmering light codes and everything. It takes it to a whole other layer of divine connection, right? But I love them all together, not exclusively one or the other.
Well, while you're at that juncture, would you give information as to how people might get in touch with you for this beautiful activation process you're sharing?
I would love that. It was such an honor to share this activation. It's surrounding all the tools to support yourself in healing and connecting with the sacred, connecting with the divine, the cosmic self, and the electric universe. It's very shape, sacred geometry, and ancient practice oriented. And it's my baby. It's a huge devotion of my own healing path that I've been encouraged to share with as many people who it resonates with. So I call it quantum holographic Reiki. The reason I call it that is quantum meaning split realities. So that is endless in itself. Holographic, non-local, yes, right? Local and non-local. Like, we have a quantum holographic universe within and around us. So it's both of that. And the first module is to discover your holographic universe so that you're able to really connect with the reflection of reality that you want to choose. and the reflection of reality you don't want to entangle with. So quantum meaning split dimensions, split realities, split possibilities. Holographic meaning each spot possibility has birthed into a story or a memory or a connection or a reality. And then Reiki meaning universal life force. And but really they are master tools to really align with your power with earth and your sacred humble connection with earth simultaneously. And so my email is, or my website is arianesaffron.com, or to register you can email me at arianesaffron.com. Should I spell that or?
Yeah, please.
Okay. So Ariane is spelled Ariane. Saffron is Saffron. So again, it's arianesaffron.com or Ariane at arianesaffron.com.
Okay, beautiful. Well, when you were sharing the information about the activation, I recalled in one of our previous communications that you spoke of the utilization of phi.
Yes.
And do you use phi visuals to trigger pineal and pituitary gland activations?
Yes, I use phi in everything. I actually even drummed the phi sequence before we sat down together. To me, you need to come into this golden rhythm to be able to really transmute energy, to really kind of walk in this, because the reality is the more conscious you get is because you're conscious. And we are constantly transmuting this toral energy with everything we're interacting with. And our body and creationism natural rhythm is the golden ratio, but we live in a rhythm that's the Pythagorean rhythm. So it's going to feel discombobulated the more you awaken. And by connecting with the phi rhythm, you connect with your truth and your sacred connection of earth and connecting with people, plants, nature. So I actually teach this in the program and teach people to apply it with their self, or if they are serving somebody. It's a very important part of healing.
Well, please, would you share that with us now, the phi rhythm that you use in your activation?
I would love to, yeah. So I typically, now phi rhythm, you know what? I can just do a split screen quickly just to show people because I already have my, there we go. So this is the PDF and template for the class that I teach.
Mm-hmm.
There we go. Okay, so this is the number sequence of the phi rhythm. This is the spiral, the golden ratio.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And this is found in everything. Let me just see here. All right, thought I had some more available pictures. Here we go. The golden ratio. Where there is matter, there is geometry. So everything in the universe, from the micro to the macro, is based on this rhythm. So is healing. When you connect, think of the laws of energy. You connect with something, anything. Then from that connecting, you start to collect data. Then from that data collecting, you start to absorb it and contemplate your own data with that data. So it's a greater leap and a greater leap. And then once you have all the information you need, you often go into a chaos state, which is a curve or a bend, while you build up that energy to take your quantum leap to the next layer of whatever it is that you're attuning to. And so I think this is such an important matter. It's how life grows. It's this, I love this image because there's a little baby there and a universe and a shell and a plant and a storm. It's just repeated in nature and everything. And I think that's such an important part of integrating conscious responsibility for your energy and your healing path is to integrate with the rhythm of natural creation.
Yes, indeed.
And yes, and so what this is, sorry, just flicking through here. I wish I was a little more organized, but this is basically what I do. And so I will drum the red numbers. I will drum, I will tap, I will rattle. whatever it is. So so basically it's goes like this. I will ask everybody to put 3 fingers beneath their belly button and then find your 0 point. You're going to breathe in, pushing your hand out. Breathe out, pushing your hand in. Breathe in, pushing your hand out. Breathe out, pushing your hand in. One more time, breathing in, breathing out. Maintaining that breath. So what's so beautiful, I do everything 3 times. So I do things in 3-6-9. It's my constant ascension pattern. You know, the Tesla frequencies it's the 9 rings are the rings of creation. And so I do everything in that number sequence. It always seems to feel balanced.
Yes, you've been Tesla-fied.
Yes. And then the other thing too is twice I actually messed up the numbers in the number sequence. And when I do stuff like that, I look at it as a medicine. Maybe that's where I'm personally, because I'm drumming, that tells me where my vibration, where I need to work on something in myself. So right. I might do something like drum up to that number where I messed it up a couple of times with breath work, just to get myself into that rhythm. Mm-hmm. I don't like to overanalyze what I'm witnessing because if you get lost in the story, you create more story. You create more vibration, and every single thing that you do creates a shape or a form. And I try to practice intentional form. Yeah. So this is something you can apply in the training.
Beautiful. Well, you know, the 5 family grows in amazingly quintessential quantumness, because this pattern recognition does dwell in our inner knowing, and it is so, as we know, all pervasive to everything in existence. And I have been so devoted to this for as long as I can remember. But in this life, I met a Dr. Patrick Flanagan in around 1974, and was deeply introduced to the potency of Phi through his work. But also he was a pyramid researcher, and he was a soul that at the age of 9 or 10 years old, he had invented a guided missile detection system. Wow. And he entered a Houston fair in Houston, Texas, a science fair, and won all ages. That science fair nominated him and gave him the All Ages Award. And the very next Monday when he went to school, the FBI and the CIA sent representatives to the principal's office to have a talk with him. And he was just an advanced soul.
Mm.
And interestingly enough, in his lifetime, he transitioned just recently, this last, I want to say, not too long ago now. I'm not remembering the exact date, but in the journey that he had in this beautiful lifetime, some people said he was the reincarnation of Tesla.
Okay.
And when the FBI and the officials went into Tesla's laboratory to do their control factors on his life and his work, there were certain FBI agents that had gone into Tesla's laboratory that heard of this Dr. Flanagan speaking or having been spoken of as the reincarnation of Tesla.
Wow.
So the story goes that either one or two of these FBI agents wanted to talk to Dr. Flanagan to test his ability to see if he knew anything specifically about Tesla's laboratory, because they took pictures, they took notes, they confiscated everything in the laboratory. And the story goes that Dr. Flanagan knew enough about the Tesla's laboratory that he amazed the FBI agents in what he knew. So the journey of that fractal flow of golden liquid love light glowing that we share in these rejuvenations of inner knowing brings forth the beauty and the blessing of Phi. And I feel it's the most important thing we can do overall is to honor that harmony, because as you know, it's Mother Nature's most chosen formula.
I can agree.
The toroidal flow, the everything that, I mean, it's such a powerful evidence of an intelligent, loving quality in the generation of what we call creation. There is an intelligence behind what might seem to be randomness, because the fractal flow, as you know, from certain perspectives, it does look chaotic.
Yeah.
But from other perspectives, it has a symmetry and synergy to itself that speaks unspoken volumes of harmony and the blessed sacredness of geometry, which, as you stated earlier, we are representatives of this beautiful sacredness.
100%. Yeah.
And to ignore it is being disrespectful to Mother Earth and Father Sky. But to embrace it is the best way we can honor all of creation, ourselves and everything in existence. And another person that was very dear in my life was R. Buckminster Fuller, who he credited his understanding of sacred geometry as coming from his paying attention to Mother Nature. And when Einstein had put his theory of relativity out to the world, he had a chance to talk to Buckminster Fuller. And after his talk, Einstein said, well, young man, you are maybe one of a handful of people that understand the theory of relativity to such a precise level. And it's based on your understandings and knowings of Phi. And Buckminster Fuller incorporated, he was credited with inventing the geodesic dome, although many of his patents were so far in advance of where humanity's consciousness was that he patented various designs and artifacts that would benefit humanity in what he called doing more with less. Because nature does more with less by making use of Phi.
That speaks to me. Yes.
And we can build and clothe ourselves. If the food, the clothing, the shelter, the tools, the amusement, and the love, those 7 necessities that all sentient beings share: food, clothing, shelter, tools, amusement, love, and fuel. Applying Phi to all those 7 necessities will quantum leap our existence into being able to sustain and resustain and maintain the sustainability of this beautiful system that rejuvenates herself so naturally in ways that we can't even begin to think of. But as you said earlier, it's the non-thinking, non-analytical, going to that quiet stillness where you are no one, in nowhere, in no time. We don't need to be somebodies.
No.
Because in essence, we are everybody. And by being that everyone and that the quality of everything that comes from this beautiful nothingness that's known as the void, for some beautiful reason, takes on the form and formless grace of Phi in every act of creation. And that is a beautiful way to activate, as you've shared with us. And I am so, again, honored to meet again in this plane of earthly existence. And even though I know you have frequent flyer miles in many dimensions.
It's true.
You have frequent flyer miles in many interstellar, interplanetary journeys.
Yes.
And time-wise, how are we doing time-wise?
We're at 6 minutes and 56 seconds.
Okay, so in 6 minutes and some seconds, we will go to the closing portion of this, which will be, I hope, for the first of many interviews that we do. Yeah. Because these conversations with you are a blessing to all creation, and you must be honored for your presence. And I'm so thankful that you're taking the timeless time to think the thoughtless thoughts of the mindless mind with me.
That was very Dr. Zeus of you, but that's so true. You almost have to be empty and full.
Yes, indeed.
Get out of your mind, into your heart, and be.
Which speaks of the ultimate poetic paradox of being. I mean, we are being what we already are, in the becoming of what we are. We seemingly are being awakened to a reawakening of remembering that we've always been, always shall be, and what more can be said? We are soul time eternals, that soul time eternity that we share, and then the blessedness of coming together with soul family members, star family members, members from other realms of vibration, other realms of resonance, and all those realms share in this beauty of Phi. And that is perhaps how we make love to creation, we make love to one another, we make love to existence by being in harmony with creation and sharing our knowing, as we have been prompted sometimes through many dark nights of the soul to reawaken and remember and rediscover.
Many.
But in closing,
sorry.
I know you do. In closing, we had spoken initially of the Trinity of Inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
And you had texted me that information, but the humility, the other two facets of the Trinity of Inspiration that you have gathered in your conversations with elders, and the one that your heart, mind, soul, and spirit embraces, the Trinity being humility. And please add to that, please.
Pause, practice the pause and breathe before you respond to everything, especially if you're going to sit with elders. I find elders and indigenous wisdom walkers, people who are carrying that knowledge, they pause and take a breath. They listen to the environment, they feel in their body, they listen to the trees, the nature and sacredness, and it's a slower pace. And you have to pause and look at the space as wisdom. Don't look at the space as something to fill. This is one of the experiences that I've had being around. I've met many shamans in the last 2 years. And even myself, I found myself wanting to fill the space. I had to really grow up, and I'm still growing. But I noticed that when other people speak when they had the opportunity, I had brought some shamans to some healing groups. I found that everybody was in such a hurry. It took some coaxing to get people just to calm down and breathe. The silence in that space in between is a teacher as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. What a wonderful way to put that. I love that space in between. I like to speak of the space in between the rhythms of our heartbeat drum. And in music, it's the space in between the notes that defines so much more that many people might not be aware of.
Well, I can think that can bring us back to phi. It's the pauses are the bends. There's leaps between the numbers because the experience is curving. So I think that you can find that. And interesting you brought up the drumming circle, because I feel that that is one of the most ancient, simple practices to connect with that rhythm wave of Mother Earth. When you're in a group and you're drumming that heartbeat, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In a collective group, and you forget, and you're just doing the same thing, and you forget, and you get lost in that, you start vortexing with the mother.
Yes.
You feel it in your root chakra, you start swaying. That's one of the quickest ways to connect with Earth, I think, is through drumming practices.
Well, you know, I want to interject. You mentioned the humility and the pause, the trust factor.
Yes.
And I don't know if you follow or listen to Eckhart Tolle, but if you ever watch his live YouTubes, whenever he's asked a question, he always takes that pause. And it's interesting that from hip hop to the light language that you expressed, anytime we're going to get in touch with our heart mind, there's a trust factor, because you and I, like, for instance, I don't have a script that I'm talking to you from. So what I'm talking from is a deep, deep sense of trust, not knowing what words will roll off my tongue and pour from my heart, but to trust the spontaneity of the moment. And to walk the red road, wherever we go, no matter what people we're with, we can always, if we can remember to be mindful enough to be humble, to trust and to pause and breathe and go to that quiet stillness. And does that not lead to what the contemplation or pondering of humility is?
I agree. I think they all go together. You know, they're kind of like the same line quality to one shape, you know? And that's where I think sacred geometry is so important when it comes into that. It's that it changes the shape and the quality of how you're expressing any given moment. And when you're able to pause and find that humble stillness, you you are able to see the energy of the world around you and choose the shape of how you want to interact with that. And it correlates with the phi symbology as well. You know, like it's all about the quality of your interaction with the sacred truth around you. And it's an undeniable truth. It's never stops. It's just, are you engaged with it with awareness?
Right.
Are
we able to allow our hearts to hear and truly listen?
Well, our hearts actually beat to the same rhythm. They also create a torus. So there's all these natural components, you know, to it.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed. Well, the toroidal flow between us has grown even stronger today.
Indeed.
And I want to thank you, beloved Ariane Safran, a name so melodic that it brings music to creation just to utter your name. And that's a beautiful kind of name to have. So you've chosen well, but thankfully I know you in nameless, formless realms as well.
Yeah.
And no matter how formless or nameless you become, I will always recognize you. And may you do the same for me. And in closing, let me thank you for participating in this conversation with elders. because the theme is that all ages, all generations, all cultures, races, all creeds, all religious, spiritual, and political preferences are welcomed to come and join us here at Glastonbury Radio 432 to TED Talk in Tongues as we share the blessings of mother, daughter, sister, lover, priestess, goddess, friend, as we honor the blessings of love's perfect stranger, deja vu. I see it in myself as I see it in you. I see it in you as you see it in me. And I know that you know, and you know that I know. And let us give thanks for this unspoken inner knowingness that allows our inner witnesses to testify to the beauty and eternal grace of all our birthright divinity offers us. Bless you, my beloved. Bless you, bless you.
Tarakana tini kana shini kana tarakani tini kana chaknia takana rakini sinera no toroto no teki. We are in the thread of destiny since the beginning of time. We are a golden bridge of creation. We will always find each other because we are a piece of each other. Ahumegwich.
Blessed be, blessed be, blessed be. Thank you.